Good afternoon and welcome to this Wyoming State Library production. My name is Paige Bredenkamp and I am the school library consultant at the Wyoming State Library. We all have experience with technology in one form or another, but as educators sometimes it's challenging to try to utilize technology effectively with students. This could be because of the platform, the physical devices or lack thereof, or any number of issues. Today we will hear from Megan Dingman and Maggie Unterseher, both school librarians in Campbell County School District Number 1. They're going to share ways that they have successfully integrated technology into their school library programs and hopefully inspire you to try something new in your own school library. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the Wyoming State Library website as well as the Wyoming State Library YouTube channel. There will be time at the end of the webinar to answer questions, but if you don't think you'll remember your questions by the end, feel free to type them into the question box. And without further ado, I am going to turn this over to Maggie and Megan, and they can tell you a little bit about themselves and tell you about their challenges and successes in integrating technology.
I'm Megan Dingman, and I've been in education for 12 years, and 10 of those have been in the library.
And I'm Maggie Unterseher, and I am a librarian at 2 elementary schools in Gillette, Wyoming. I've been in libraries for about 6 years. This is my first time in Campbell County at an elementary library, and I'm a begrudging millennial as far as my technology goes. So, yeah, we like to integrate. All right, so we are going to show you a little bit into our world with Integration Nation and how we combine technology and library media because we are passionate about both. We do love literacy, but we also know that our students need a start in life as far as what they're going to be expected to do after they leave our classrooms. The link at the bottom is a permalink for you, a shortened permalink for you to access this presentation later and save it to your Google Drive or download it.
We also serve as our district librarians in Campbell County, so we oversee a lot of different aspects of the library world. And part of that is how libraries have drastically changed, not just from books and reading, but to integration of technology and transliteracy. So part of that is making sure that we connect to not only Common Core, but the American Library Association standards and the ISTE standards.
And that's really important for us to be able to cross those over for our students and our classrooms. So the question is, what do we integrate? Because a lot of people aren't sure exactly what that might look like because they can be two exclusive parts of school, I guess. But library media to us is literacy, research, library skills, digital citizenship, digital creation, information production, digital literacy and curator of resources. And a lot of that crosses over in technology other than it's all basically the same except for the uses and the different types of tools that you use for technology.
And technology can be technology skills focusing on just the piece of equipment or program, digital citizenship, creation and sharing, handling exposure to new hardware and software, and learning to adapt. And there's a crossover between technology and library media.
And so this quote, I've always loved Maya Angelou, but it's something that I like to think of whenever we learn something new because it does seem like there can always be a lot of information coming at you as a library media specialist or even somebody who integrates technology. But it's one of those things that once you know better, you want to do better, and we want to do better for our students every day.
The lie, it won't work. I don't have enough time. I'm not good with tech. All of those are things that teachers might tell themselves or librarians might tell themselves. But the truth is, the kids will help you learn. And it doesn't take long, maybe even 5 minutes to show them a new app or a new technique to do a project with. And the kids want to learn along with you. So even if you're not good with tech, you have to adapt.
And that's a big part of it is being okay to fail. because we teach our kids that every day, that we want them to have some grit and integrity when it comes to these applications and use of technology. So if we want them to use that, then we need to model it as well. And that's been something that we've kind of taken on as something fun and not so much as a obligation. So it works out if you want it to. And John Hattie is a cornerstone for a lot of educators, and so we found a lot of solace in his books too, as far as library media and tech integration goes, as when we needed some backup and some accountability as far as what we were doing in our classrooms. And it was just really important to know that it's not just specific technologies, whether you're a Windows or a Mac person, it's just the ability to be able to adapt to those environments and the different types of technology.
And we really like this, that to learn, students need to do something. You can't just sit there and expect them to listen to lecture, but to actually participate in their own learning.
And just to FYI about this presentation, if you access it through the link, most of the pictures that we have added into this are links to our resources and other places that we found information and help. Like this one here, to learn, students need to do something. That is a blog that Megan and I follow, Jennifer Gonzalez, who does a lot of pedagogy. And so if you're interested in that and finding out maybe some more that you could do as far as PD, those are also available to you.
The big concepts: keep tech relevant to the product. So don't use a product just because it's cool, but make sure that it's relevant to what you're doing. Create a time and space for collaboration. So not just with the classroom teachers, but also with your tech teachers, or maybe with your instructional facilitators. Give old lessons a little zoo. So give them a little excitement. Just because you're learning about mountain men for the 100th time in 4th grade doesn't make it need to be boring, but you can give it a little bit of excitement. Let students show their skills. The students have all different levels of technology, and let them show each other and let them help each other. And don't be afraid to take risks.
That's a big part of it with the technology, is being willing to mess things up or change the language or even the contrast. You know, you'll figure it out and you can always fix things. One thing that we feel that we do really well in Campbell County is our community outreach. We've included the list of the people that we or have programs with, or we invite them into our classroom to share that outside perspective with our students. And it's become very helpful for them and our community.
The process is easy. You have to have teacher collaboration, even if it's just through email or a quick Google survey, tech and library collaboration, and even if it's running some ideas with your tech facilitator of, hey, do you have any new apps that might work for this? And then unit integration. So you might not have a conversation with your classroom teachers, but you know what they're working on, and you can integrate it by adding something else, something a little bit exciting to their unit.
Yeah, it can be anything as traditional as books and literacy, or it could be that technology piece too. So we've also included some of the lesson ideas that Megan and I have done in our classroom that we've collaborated on, or we've collaborated with our educators in our building. So one of the things I like to do with my kinders is stations, but as we near 1st grade, I like to have them put together something a little bit more traditional so that when they make it the transition to 1st grade, it's not a huge leap. So one of the lessons I do is some unplugged coding, and that is where I read the book, Go Sleep in Your Own Bed, and then we work together to code how each animal would make it to their own bed.
For 1st grade, we have a social studies DISPA that they have to do a patriotic symbol and why that symbol is patriotic, and that's part of their social studies curriculum. And we took that into the library and we did a research on what symbols were and what patriotic symbols were. And then we each did our own Animoto video, Ed Puppet, depending on the class, and did a great video on why their symbol was patriotic.
And that brings up a good point with the DISPAs. DISPAs, for those that don't know, are our district assessments. And we do a lot of collaboration with our teachers, too, on things that can help them because they have so much of their time has taken over with other obligations that the library is a good resource for a lot of those assessments. One of the big things for our second graders as well are text features, and so this is a scavenger hunt, and I know we talk a lot about tech, but the things that have them with the kids that are kinesthetic or hands-on are really important to include too, so that they're able to create stuff with their hands and use their energy.
In second grade, you might be afraid to do something techy that gives them a little bit of free choice, but you can talk about a lot of things with just this simple project. This was done at Thanksgiving time, and it was what they were thankful for. It taught them to use Safe Search Kids to find a copyright-free image, and then to also use labels, which is part of their nonfiction text features. In third grade, they do a lot of folk tales, fairy tales, and fables, and those are connected to the Common Core. For folk tales, we did different versions of Stone Soup. There was 4 different versions that they read, and then they had to come up with their own version of a Stone Soup recipe. And for social studies, their content is continents and oceans, and they put together a book and book creator on the different continents and oceans. And in fourth grade, we've created a Wyoming history website that allows all of the fourth grade teachers to use on the different content since it is statewide. And they did different trading cards either on their mountain men or on a fort that is in Wyoming. And then they also were studying the different genres. And this was a simple thing to do, was make a genre word cloud on words that described that genre.
And as far as the Wyoming forts and those other resources that Megan has listed there, it's really nice because we share it throughout a district, and they can also be searched and found throughout the state since that's a fourth grade statewide type thing. So those are really cool to be able to use those resources. One of the other things that we like to do for outreach is to use the Wyoming State Museum. Nathan Dorr, the Director of Education there, has discovery trunks, and there's 4 different kinds, but in Campbell County, we use the Mountain Man trunk, the Frontier Army trunk, and the Plains Indians trunk. Inside these trunks are artifacts from these time periods and these times in Wyoming history that students can handle. Most of them are recreations, but it's still nice to be able to drive that point home to give them something to do, to hold, to see, to understand a little bit better what these people went through and the types of lives they lived.
And part of that was we got to recreate with the artifacts, they got to recreate a picture using green screen, and they got to explain what the artifact was used for in that time period. So those 2 examples of the frontier soldier and the Plains Indians.
And it's really neat because they definitely take ownership of that, and they're really neat to share out to parents and other stakeholders. I love that one. Fourth grade, I know we're hitting on pretty hard on them, but they do a lot with natural disasters too in our district. And so over the summer when we went to a Google Summit, we learned about these Makedos or Makedos. It's Australian, so I'm not 100% positive how to pronounce it, but you use the Makedo kit to create stuff with cardboard. And so what they did is we researched natural disasters on Go Wild, which is our Wyoming library database, and then we learned what type of structures are best suited for their natural disaster. Then they created those structures, and they had research and information to back up why they built what they did. And it was neat to see them create something, use that makerspace mentality, but also back it up with facts, even though it may not be something that we could honestly use in real world.
Our 5th grade standards for social studies was doing explorers. So we have done a lot of different things with explorers across the district, but most of us have helped with this by either creating a infographic or a green screen interview or just a type of presentation with Google Earth on where their Explorer explored.
And one of the neat tools that we've had with the update to Destiny for our library catalog is the Destiny collections. And that's what you'll see in the middle here is I have curated resources and books and websites for my students to do the research. And we talk about why Google may be good for understanding who a famous person might be or other trivial facts. But if we need to turn stuff in for school and for a grade, then we need to use reputable resources. And so Destiny Collections is good for that. Like Megan said, we like to use green screens. As you saw with the 4th grade, that was a big one that they used to create the Wyoming history information. But we use it with all our other grades because the DoInk app is easy enough to use, and as long as you have a green screen or a green wall, it works out really well and allows kids to produce that information.
And you can also use Pic Collage for free if you don't have the DoInk app. That would just be a still screen. 5th grade did a big research project that was part of their social studies DISPA. And in this case, they did an infographic. It's just a different way to display their information and be creative in how they want to share their information. And in this case, they used Google Draw, but they could use Canva or other platforms to do this.
And also as librarians, a big part of our task is to teach fake news or media literacy. And so we do a unit on that. We talk about the invasion of fake news with the War of the Worlds, which was interesting for my students. And I've linked the presentations here too from when we went to the Wyoming Library Association conference this past fall. But what they do after we learn a little bit about fake news, and of course we talk about the news that their parents listen to and the bias in that, then I have them create a comic strip, and they can choose whatever characters they'd like. But they do that comic strip to help explain what bias is and what fake news is so that they can help relate that information to other students or their parents even, and it gives them a voice in what they need to know as far as being literate in the world. I've also linked 2 of the books that we use for some of these units called 2 Truths and a Lie, and it's actually pretty cool because the top one is a science one, the bottom one is history, but they go through 2 stories that are real and then they put in one that's fake, and it's really cool because they've also curated their resources so that information that kids want to know more about, it gives them the links to read more about even the stories that are fake, but more importantly the ones that are true because some of them sound too good to be true.
And it's nice because when we teach them the fake news, we teach them to read past the headlines. And in those books, they have to read past the headlines to figure out which one is the fake news article. In 6th grade, they do a lot of Civil War up to present-day history, and this was at the beginning of the year. One of them created an infographic on Civil War spies, and another one did a timeline battle for their Civil War battles.
The really cool thing about all that we've shown you can be adapted all the way up to 12th grade or seniors, and it's not just limited to K-6. A lot of it is just using the tools and the resources that we've provided, and that's what Megan has with these books.
And they're great resources that show how it can be novice, operational, and proficient, and you can use different platforms and still have the same results.
Here's our contact information if you have any questions. Both of us are on the Twitter, and then of course our email addresses too.
All right, that is wonderful. Thank you, ladies, for that. There is a lot of really wonderful information there. I love that you mentioned Go Wild and that you use it. That's great. I also think it's fantastic about the green screens because I think everybody really kind of is curious about that and would love to be able to use them, but aren't quite sure how to go about it. So thank you for sharing that. Anything else that you two would like to add?
It can be scary, the technology and the integration and curriculum and everything that a librarian's job is. But truly when you put the students first, a lot of it is the education portion, not only of yourself, but of other ways to show information, show that our students are learners, and that's a lot of it is the different type of learners that we all have in our classrooms. They need to be able to have a choice and be able to show what they know in more than just one way. And so that's kind of what drives us is we want these kids to be successful, and we want them to be literate not only in the traditional term, but in life and everything that's going to be thrown their way when they leave our classroom, because we don't know what that's going to look like because it is the future.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and you two are doing fantastic work up there in Campbell County. We're lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have you join us online and share this with the rest of Wyoming and however far out this goes. So thank you both for joining me here. And if you have any questions, my contact information is on the screen. Thank you all for joining us, and see you next time for another Wyoming State Library production.